Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taiji, and today we're talking to the amazing Pamela Golbin. Pamela was the Chief Curator of Fashion and Textiles of the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, which is Louvre's fashion museum. She was the custodian of one of the most significant and extensive collections of fashion and textiles in the world. She worked there for 25 years and has personally staged important exhibitions on the work of iconic fashion designers like Valentino, Marc Jacobs, and many others. She's currently part of this pretty cool project with Jacquard by Google. The award-winning team has invented a technology that weaves directly into the fabric, transforming clothes into digital wearables. Now tell me, how cool is that? Pamela, it's so nice to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Maria.
I'm so excited to have you with us, Pamela. Thank you so much. So, Pamela, before we get into the wearables piece, it would be great if you could share with us your experience as Chief Curator at the museum. You must have so many amazing stories, that could surely make episodes and episodes for the whole year. But for now, if you could pick your favorite, it would be great.
Well, thank you, Maria. First and foremost, I'm delighted to be here on Future Hacker, and I hope I can share some thoughts between fashion and technology. At the museum for 25 years, I concentrated more on the past, but actually how to make the past speak to the present so that we could create the future. And in doing so, I met some amazing people, such creative and open minds. And I do have lots of very funny stories. I mean, one year there was someone who kept coming to see me at the museum. And I get this phone call from the entrance saying, there's a Mr. Canini that has been waiting for you. And I said, that's strange. I don't have an appointment. I'm not at my office at the moment, but I'll get back to you. I finally get back to the museum and I keep getting these calls. There's a Mr. Canini. So finally I go downstairs and I'm like, who's Mr. Canini? It turns out it was Kanye West, but they didn't know how to pronounce Kanye's.
Oh my God.
And at the time, Kanye was in Paris and he was learning more about fashion. And he's quite an interesting character and he wanted to learn. So he would come to the museum and I would take him around and, we would go through from the Middle Ages to present day, the decorative arts and the fashion exhibitions. And it's always a very satisfying moment to see that sharing the past and history allows people to open up their mind and think about what they can bring forth and how they can create something. But what always touched me was really, when I was flying to different cities around the world, I traveled quite a lot and I continue to travel, was to see the reaction of the visitors, just the person who would pay his ticket and come and see the exhibitions. And many of them had transformative experiences. And that was for me the most satisfying because although we don't realize it, fashion is a very integral part of our lives because we have to get dressed every day. Even at home, there are those Zoom calls you need to put on, a proper shirt. But it is a second skin. It is our armor. It is the way we present ourselves to the world. So it does seem quite superficial, but actually it's extraordinarily important in our everyday lives. And so the work that we did at the museum was how to translate that and make it accessible to people. And I think that, after 25 years, I really felt I had written my part of the story at the museum and I decided to leave. And I traded fashion history for the future, thanks to the Jacquard technology that you so kindly mentioned.
Yes, I can't wait to hear more about that. But there are a couple of things that you said that I really loved, which is using the past to create the future. That's very Future Hacker, really deep praise, and making fashion accessible to people. I think it's a great mission because it's not. So do you think that currently fashion is something that is more accessible?
Absolutely. Fashion has never been as accessible as it is today. You see, fashion over the ages was more of a visual code, a code that had extreme rules in which, depending on what class you were from and where geographically you were from, you couldn't wear certain things. You had to wear others, so that it was like a uniform. People could see who they were speaking to by the way they dressed. It was kind of like in the army. You have the generals, you have the corporals, you have the lieutenants, and each has their own uniform so that you could see exactly where they were placed in the hierarchy. Fashion over the centuries has been about that. It has been about being able to see where in the social hierarchy you fit in so that the person who's speaking to you can address you in the proper way. Today, fashion is more about personal expression, and that's what's so interesting, is that it is a tool that you can use to present yourself in different ways. Before, those ways were quite limited. Today, you could literally change the person you are every time you change your outfit. And that's quite exceptional if you want to play those different roles.
Great points, Pamela. So let's get into the evolution part of the fashion industry. There's so much to cover, right? Let's start with a project which transforms clothes into the digital wearables. So basically this technology that can go into any fabric and it's connectable. So if I understood it right, the clothes you wear, you could connect you to devices. Is that right? So how does it work, and which applications do you see in a foreseeable future?
So this story, the Jacquard story for me, is the perfect example of how the past can inform the future. Jacquard was actually a man, a French man at that, Monsieur Jacquard, who at the end of the 18th century is going to do something quite exceptional. He's going to automatize the weaving looms that made silks in France. And by doing that, he not only makes the process go faster, but also he invents a system of punch cards. And so the punch cards allowed the loom to be automated. And these punch cards will be the basis of what IBM uses at the beginning of the 20th century to invent the computer. And so we go from the 18th century to the computer age, all the way now to connectable clothing. And that's where Jacquard by Google comes in, which is a division that's part of Google that's really innovates in textiles. The inventor of this technology is a Russian scientist whose name is Ivan Popyrev, who I had met several years ago when he started this incredible adventure. And Ivan actually invented a thread that, when is woven into any material, makes that material connectable. And one of the first things that he did with this invention was he wove this thread into a Levi's jacket, cargo jacket. And that was really the first implementation of the technology he had invented. And so what does this do? Depending on where the Jacquard fabric is on the jacket, you can program it to do all sorts of functions. You can program it to turn on your lights. You can program it to turn on your phone, to make a phone call, to put the volume up or down, to turn on music. So anything that you can do with your phone, you can actually then program simple commands to make that happen without touching your phone. And often the idea was that when you're on your move, you don't want to get your phone out of your pocket or out of your purse or out of your bag. And it's just easier to tap on your jacket. And that's how the project began.
This sounds so interesting, Pamela. And besides the connectivity part, do you see any other new technology being adopted in this industry? Like, if I could guess, I would say like 3D printing, augmented reality might make sense for fashion shows, for example. Immersive experiences for sure, right? So what's out there? What else is out there?
There's so much out there, and there has been work that has been done around sustainability, around connectability, around smart fabrics since the 1980s. So this is not something that's particularly new. Like in most creative industries, it's a question of timing. And the timing has never been better than now for many reasons. The infrastructure is much more advanced. Wi-Fi is much more available. Accessibility to technology is cheaper these days. So that already the infrastructure is prepared. What makes the difference is the consumer. I don't think we realize to what extent there is technology already out there that could be used. It's a moment where technology and the consumer need to be on the same wavelength, and that's when something technologically advanced within fashion will make a big change.
So I was thinking to myself now when you were giving all those examples of, using fashion and the wearables to make our life easier. Do you see this as a way of helping out inclusion, like, people maybe with disabilities? And do you see this being used for people, not only with disabilities, but elderly or, just to help out on daily tasks? Is it something that has been explored?
Well, I think due to the pandemic, the health aspect that can come from clothes that is either technologically smart or advanced or has been treated will most certainly find a very large population of consumers that might be interested. And so those are things that you'll probably see coming out more and more. What's different is between clothes and fashion. Fashion has a creative element that supersedes any basic clothes that you have in your wardrobe, so that fashion designers look to give an aesthetic and design point of view when they present collections. That being said, they're also extremely open to what's going on today, and more importantly, what the consumer wants today. So that when it will be important for consumers to look to technology to find in their clothes, that will be available. But there's just a moment, and that's where we're at now, where what will come first? Is it the creative aspect, or is it the consumer that's going to be demanding it that will push the designers to address those issues? Maybe it's both at the same time. I think what's exciting at the moment is that there is a huge transformation going on in the fashion industry on all levels, because like in so many industries, the entire value chain has been completely upended by the pandemic and by this entire year of major transformative change in the whole society, by that matter. So that there's incredible opportunities, but in that opportunity realm, we'll have to wait and see what's going to really bring substantial change for that to be integrated within the entire fashion system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Pamela, we still have a lot to cover. So this is the end of the first episode with you. But keep listening, everybody, because we're still going to talk about the use of sustainable materials and the future of fashion in the sense of this whole changes that Pamela just commented about, the chain, the production, the creation, the distribution. So we still have a lot to discuss. Stay tuned, everybody. We're going to be right back.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.